Morning. I'm Sarah Mayab, and I am happy to serve on your board of trustees. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you for joining us both in person and online. Please scan the QR code on the screen to let us know that you are here and to get a digital version of our order of service, as well as find our donation page if you are visiting with, our donation page, there should be a period. If you are visiting with us for the first time, please meet us at the greeters table. We have a first-time visitor's gift for you. And starting today, one of our cherished volunteers will be available in Slaughter Lounge to share getting to know you information. This short meet and greet is for those who want to learn more about who we are and what we believe here at First UU. We have a few announcements this morning. Yesterday was the Columbus Community Pride, a festival which centers and celebrates queer and trans people of color. This morning, we have a clip about the history of Community Pride, which is going to be shared now.
Hello, my name is Tempest, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a core organizer with Black, Queer, Intersectional Collective. Be quick. I'm also a co-lead with Columbus Community Pride. I specifically get to help with producing our shows for Community Pride, drawing in some of the best talent, queer and trans people of color here in Columbus. That includes our festival lineup, Queer Art Night, and Burlesque Show. Be Quick was created March 2017 after our co-founders, Dakema Alexis and Ariana Steele, both saw a dire need for safe spaces for Black LGBTQIA+ folk in Central Ohio. We wanted to organize and advocate for our issues because we realized there were clear issues of anti-Blackness in many popular LGBTQIA+ spaces, and many Black-led spaces failed to acknowledge the fight of our people of marginalized gender and of sexual orientations. Be Quick was created to be a space to uplift the needs, narrative, and passion of Black LGBTQIA+ people within and outside of our collective to achieve a world where all Black LGBTQIA+ folk are free from oppression. Black and brown LGBTQIA+ folks have long led the way for rights and liberations here in this country, despite still receiving the least resources and support needed to stay alive. We would not have Pride without Black trans women, and many of which who were sex workers that faced housing instability. They were poor or disabled. Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Riviera, Miss Major Griffin Gracie, Stormy Delaney, and many QTIPOC elders and ancestors recognized that white-centered LGBTQIA spaces would never serve the needs of the most vulnerable in our communities, and demanded we created pathways towards collective liberation.
If you would like to watch the rest of this video and learn more about Community Pride and help us envision how First UU might support Community Pride next year, please return to the Worship Center today at 11:30. Please also sign up for the BREAD listening sessions. BREAD stands for Building Relationships, Equality, and Dignity, and is a congregation-based community organization of 44 different religious congregations in Central Ohio. BREAD researches proven solutions and applies nonpartisan pressure on local decision makers to help with housing, education, violence, climate change, and other community problems in Central Ohio. As a founding BREAD congregation, First UU does our part every fall to surface these community problems and build a deeper community by sharing our stories with each other and in our listening sessions. Please stop by the Jam Table in Beach Hall or check Friday News to pick a listening session that works for you. It's auction time. Our auction website is now live. The deadlines for entering your items and activities on the website are Friday, October 6th, 12 p.m. for good stuff. Friday, October 13th, 12 p.m. Oh, this is for Ed. Hey, where is Ed? There you are. I was like, okay, Ed, come on up and do your own announcement. You got more info.
Indeed, I am Ed. Good morning. I have had the honor of serving on the auction team, and this is my second year. I have had an absolute blast. I would encourage everyone to get involved, to volunteer. You have so much fun. You get to know people. There is plenty of laughter and humor, and it will be well worth your while. So why am I standing here before you today? Since I have everyone's attention, I want you to take a look at this. And please read it very carefully. Those of you online, this means you too. And what is this? It's a panic button. Okay, let me tell you why. This is the status report. Only 28 out of 49 items of the items that we have gotten so far have been contributed by the congregation, and only half of those 28 items are from auction team members. If we sold all of the items that we currently have now, and if they sold right now for their value, and that's a very unknown variable, we would only have $8,400. Our goal, folks, is $30,000. That is our goal. We only have 3 dinners, 3 excursions, a couple of classes, and a couple of meal and more items. That's all. So I am raising this panic button to let people know to please go online to the website. The process is a little bit different from last year. We have changed software. It's not that hard. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And we want you to not wait until the last minute, because this will slow the process up. It will not be as successful for you and for the committee and for the church. So when you are posting, please remember, include the information about the time, the date, and the location. Kind of like the old grade school who, what, where, when kind of thing. You want to cover all of those things, please, in your entry. We are going to be at Beach Hall during coffee hour, and we are going to be there most every Sunday. Please stop in if you have any questions, any concerns, any comments, anything, feedback. Come back and talk to us. Okay, so once again, folks. All right, thank you.
I am Amanda Hayes, and I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as your Justice Minister. We begin this service by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Adena, Hopewell, Wyandotte, Miami, Seneca, Erie, and Cayuga people. We cultivate this awareness that concrete acts of solidarity, healing, and reparation may accompany our symbolic acknowledgments.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Terasa Cooley, and my pronouns are she, her. And for our opening words this morning, I'm sharing words from our former minister, Reverend Marco Bellatini. O thou nameless, named in so many ways by all of us, give wings to our heart and set free the ancient joys within us. Lift the veils of sleep from our minds with care, and let outward morn be called to inward dawn. We are here to worship, to join in singing an Alleluia which we did not begin and which we shall not complete, to take part in a play of praise, a rhythm of revelation, a merciful art, that it might give shape to our longing for you, O love, our way and our end. Set free within us our gifts to bless and be blessed. Set the day before us as a splendid, holy gift, and bless these hours with thy participation in the quickening of our devotion. We are here. And now as the kids go out to gather the light, which they will be bringing in, I invite all of you to rise as you're willing or able and greet one another. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Side, it sounds a bit better.
That's better. I'm sure with it. Thank you all. Good morning. It's hard to get you back. I know you want to say hi to everyone. So it is now time for the children to bring in the light. Our chalice lighting words come from our Universalist ancestor, Clarence Skinner. I will still proclaim the vision splendid, till it strikes God fire in old and broken hearts and urges on the world to consummate its dream. God is unsurrendered, so am I. Therefore, I will live communicate with hope. I light the candle and I dream.
Thank you, June, for your help lighting our chalice. Good morning. I'm Amber Scott, your Director of Religious Exploration, and my pronouns are she, they. Today's story is called The Boy and the Sea, written by Camille Andros and illustrated by Amy Bates. Once there was a boy who lived by the sea. The sea was old and wise. The boy liked to listen to its whispers. From time to time, the sea was dark and dangerous. So was the boy. Other times, the sea was tranquil and tender. So was the boy. But once in a while, the sea felt the pull of something more. And the boy did too. The boy liked to think, and often his thoughts turned into questions. Some of his questions had answers, but many did not. So he returned to the waves and their whispers. The boy sat, and he listened, and he thought he heard the sea say, dream. And so he did. From time to time, it felt dark and dangerous. Other times, it felt tranquil and tender. But once in a while, the boy felt the pull of something more. As the boy grew, his questions became more complicated. Answers were fewer and farther between. So he returned to the waves and their whispers. The boy sat and he listened, and he thought he heard the sea say, love. So he did. From time to time, it felt dark and dangerous. Other times, it felt tranquil and tender. But once in a while, the boy felt the pull of something more. Then the boy was grown. He thought by being grown, he'd finally know the answers to the questions. But he did not. He only knew more were going to be answered in his asking. And so he returned to the waves and their whispers and asked. The boy sat and he listened, and he thought he heard the sea say, be. From time to time, it felt dark and dangerous. Other times, it felt tranquil and tender, and once in a while, the boy felt the pull of something more. Once, there was a boy who lived by the sea. The boy was old and wise. He liked to think, and often his thoughts turned into questions. Some of his questions had answers, but many did not. So the boy sat, and he listened. The end. The story celebrates the awe and wonder we feel in nature and doesn't rush to explain why the boy returns to the sea with curiosity and openness again and again. As a community, may we be open to exploring spirituality together and returning to our anchors of love and truth again and again. I now invite the congregation to sing our young people back to their families and out to class. Our Share the Plate partner for September is the League of Women Voters of Metropolitan Columbus. The League encourages informed and active participation in government. Please use the QR code on our order of service or on the screen, text the number on the screen, or go to our website, firstuucolumbus.org, and click the Donate tab to share as you feel called. Your gifts help build a better church and a better world. Thank you. Our offering will now be gratefully received. We have some joys and some concerns to share together as a community this morning. First, we have 2 birthdays to celebrate. Linda Loesch became 80 last Tuesday, and Yvonne McNabb will be 85 on the 28th. And our concerns. Jim Pinkham's mother, Sharon Tipton, fell and broke a hip and is recovering at Riverside Hospital. David Wordlow's mother, Sarah Lucky, is in the hospital undergoing tests. Cindy Wicker, co-chair of our Board of Trustees, is home recovering from COVID. And Nathan Ham's stepmother died recently. May we hold these joys and concerns, and those yet unspoken, gently in our hearts as I ring the temple bell and we have a moment of silence. And now we will continue in a spirit of prayer, meditation, or reflection with these beautiful words from an unknown author. O thou who I doubt and yearn for, ever-present mystery, invisibly compelling, silently beseeching or ignoring or absent, I pray though I feel a fool, ready and wanting to believe yet doubting, embarrassed by belief or apologetic for doubt. Why, if you are so real, are you so elusive? Why do I care so much? Om Brahma Hare Om, Jesus Krishna Baba help me. Eloha Elohim, in your goods I wonder and praise. YHWH, ignite the bush in my mind. Grandfather, hear me now. Isis, Ishtar, Athene, God come please. What name in the nameliness? A billion stars glow in glory. In our heart minds the connection. What name and how to call, pray tell. If in doubt I relinquish, I feel disloyal. Out of place in humanity, dry, harsh, nervous. Yet, sometimes your worshipers look silly, deluding an imagined piety smugly assured. So I pray with doubt and yearning. I pray to whoever is listening, even if you are only the divine within my own heart. Kumbaya, Yifya, Kumbaya. And now our Spirit of Life choir will come up.
Every generation blames the one before. All of their frustrations come beating at your door. Know that I'm a prisoner to all that Father held so dear. I know that I'm a hostage to all his hopes and fears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years. Crumbled bits of paper filled with imperfect thoughts, stilted conversations. I'm afraid that's all we got. You say you just don't see it. He says it's perfect sense. You just can't get agreement in this present tense. We all talk a different language, talking in defense. Say it loud. Say it clear. You can listen as well as you It's too late. It's too late. When we die, to admit we don't see eye to eye. So we open up a quarrel between the present and the past. We only sacrifice the future. It's one bitterness that lasts. So don't yield to the fortunes. We sometimes see as fate. It may have a new perspective on a different day. And if you don't give up and don't give in, you may just be okay. Say it loud. Say it loud. Say it clear. Say it clear. You can listen as well as you hear. It's too late. It's too late. When we die, to admit we don't see eye to eye. I wasn't there that morning when my father passed away. I didn't get to tell him all the things I had to say. I think I got his spirit later that same year. I'm sure I heard his echo in my baby's newborn tears. I just wish I could have told him in the living years. Say it loud. Say it loud. Say it clear. Say it clear. You can listen as well as you hear. It's too late. It's too late. When we die, to admit we don't see eye to eye. To admit we don't see eye to eye. Say it loud.
Choir. Our reading today comes from Barbara Brown Taylor, a book called When God is Silent. Because language is a communal act, as much depends on those who listen as on those who speak. Every word is a smoke signal sent up with great effort. The fire must be very hot, the wood must be very green, the wet blanket must be lowered and lifted at just the right moments, but none of these is any guarantee. In order for communication to occur, you need someone watching who also knows the language. Even a knowledgeable partner is no guarantee that the message sent will be the message received. Language is porous, not solid. Every word carries its own history inside of it. Barbara Brown Taylor. Please stay seated while we sing hymn number 8. The words can be found in your hymnal or on the screen, and we've updated the words to be mother, father, parent, spirit, to be more inclusive.
Mother, Father, Parent, Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean where and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I? I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears infernal haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother, Father, Parent, Spirit, take our hearts. Take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our art.
One of the greatest challenges of being a Unitarian Universalist minister is figuring out what words to use. Coming up with words is not usually a problem that I have, but when it comes to religious language, it is important to tread carefully. One of the principles of Unitarian Universalism is that we need not believe alike to love alike. And that means there are probably as many different theological perspectives as there are Unitarian Universalists. And yet here we are as a religious community coming together to find meaning and spiritual sustenance together. I have colleagues from other religious traditions who tell me that they really do understand themselves theologically as Unitarian Universalists, but the idea of preaching to Unitarian Universalists terrifies them. I get it. There's no way that my way of thinking about religion will resonate with every one of you. So I approach this dilemma by trying to be as clear as possible. My views on religion are just that, my views. I don't expect you all to agree, and I'm rather happy, in fact, that you don't, because out of our diversity, we have the opportunity to learn from one another, to grow together. So I hope that by sharing my understandings, it will invite you to do the same, coming from your unique perspective. Our religious understandings come from the deepest parts of ourselves, those places of deep joy, deep pain, and we are made vulnerable when we share these understandings. And I do understand that I have the advantage here. I'm the one who constructs many of our services, preaches more often than others, and so for this reason it seems even more important for me to explain why I use certain words to convey my spiritual understandings. And I hope to create more opportunity for you to share yours with me. The language of faith is inherently challenging because it's trying to point to something that is more of a feeling than it is a tangible reality. My colleague Fred Muir said, sometimes the experience and feeling is still there, but the language doesn't exist to describe it in the way that you would like. So what you are really good at is dipping into the dictionaries of other disciplines to describe those feelings and experiences. We dip into the language of science. We dip into the dictionary of psychology. Sometimes we borrow words from politics to describe what ordinarily the language of faith would be describing. But we can't do that because we've rejected most of those words. Unfortunately, what can happen is we are left with nothing but science, nothing but psychology, but politics to describe an experience. This quote from Madame Bovary describes our predicament and condition. Human speech is like a cracked kettle on which we tap crude rhythms for bears to dance while we long to make music that will melt the stars. We want to melt the stars, but what we have is a language that won't quite work because it's a cracked kettle, which won't produce the sounds that we desire. I do understand why it is so hard. So many of us found the words of traditional language perhaps irrelevant at best and at worst, incredibly harmful. I have my own experiences of this growing up in a small town in Texas where it was expected that everyone would toe the line of conservative Christianity. I remember visiting a Baptist church with a friend of mine when I was in high school, and the minister stopped in the middle of the sermon and said, "You are going to hell." To me. And I started searching my conscience. What did I do? And then my friend whispered to me, "No, it's not just you, it's everybody he says this to." Not a pleasant experience. For people who have painful associations with what they experienced as the rigidity of their religious upbringing, the idea of religion or religious language easily gets thrown out with the bathwater. There's a great cartoon that shows the baggage claim area at an airport, but this particular claim had a sign that said, "Emotional baggage claim." Out came bags labeled alcoholic father, emotionally distant mother, Sister Ursula at Sacred Heart School and her ruler. I know this puts it rather flippantly, but at the same time, I know that it is true that there are people here who have very deep wounds suffered at the hands of those who used religious language to justify their abuse. I do understand and I get it, but I still want a language that allows me to speak about that deep part of our human experience, that finds the words to capture the questions in the deep, dark night of our souls about what our lives might mean. As Barbara Brown Taylor said in our reading, language is porous, not solid, and we can't presume that we each have the same history with each word. But it is the best tool with which we try. Take the word religion. There's debate about where the word religion finds its source. There's religio, which means respect for what is holy. Or religare, which could mean to read or go through it again. Or religare, which could mean to bind together. All of these meanings could find purchase in what we now know as religion, a system of thought or a way of worshiping, a way of coming together. We tend to connect that to institutions, the institution of a denomination or a major religion, and so the word has become bound up with implications of rules, regulations, dogma, strict interpretations. And so we can imagine why that way of thinking becomes anathema to those who want a more open and less rigid way of thinking. So we often turn to the word spiritual. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "By spiritual, I do not mean religious in any formal sense, but simply progress in goodness. I mean essentially the ability to love and the ability to experience and to respond with deepening sensitivity to the world in which one lives." I am all for helping each of us to find ways to grow in this kind of spiritual awareness. But spiritual, to me, is also limiting because it ends up implying only our individual experience. If you go on to Google Images and search for the word spiritual, you have to go through literally hundreds of images of individual people, usually with a beautiful sunset or a sunrise or in the forest, hundreds before you get to anything that is slightly communal. Over the years, I've come to believe that in order for religious community to be deeply meaningful, it must do two things simultaneously, which sometimes seem opposite from one another. One of these things is what Unitarian Universalists, I think, do better than any other tradition I know, and that is to help people feel seen and heard and honored just as you are, exactly as you are. Or to use slightly more traditional language, that each of us reflects the image of God in all of our diverse manifestations and expressions. This kind of assurance helps us feel seen, understood, and without it, religion devolves into dogma and judgment and rigidity. But on the other hand, there's another important part of religious community that I think we as Unitarian Universalists sometimes neglect to our peril. And that is to understand that even in our uniqueness, we are still part and parcel of a larger universe. In other words, even though we may see ourselves as reflected in God's image, we are not God. We are not all-powerful. We are not in control of what surrounds us. Each of us has things to learn and ways in which we need to grow, and being in religious community holds us in these difficult and sometimes painful and humiliating experiences and assures us that we are not alone. So I realize I'm getting rather esoteric at this point, so let me try to take it down a level. Our larger culture surrounds us with messages that we have to look or be one particular way or another in order to be approved or included. For a community like ours to give the opposite message, you are loved for who you are, is a powerful purpose of religious community. We could get that from cultural studies or psychology, as Fred Muir mentioned, but then we lose the sacredness of the experience. How much more powerful is it to say that you and I are reflective of the image of creation, the image of what I call God? When I served the First Unitarian Church of Chicago, the famous Chicago Children's Choir was founded there with the goal of bringing together children of many backgrounds united by the pure joy of creating music together. It was wonderful to have them participate in special services in the church. And at one of these services, I repeated a litany which was designed to help affirm people in many identities. It included a statement about if you are gay and lesbian or bisexual or transgender, you are welcome here. Something we often hear in our churches. Several years later, after I left Chicago, I met a young woman who was in the Chicago Children's Choir that day. She hadn't grown up in a UU church, so it was a revelation to her that we could speak as we did. And it turned out she was just in the process of deciding whether it was safe to come out as a lesbian. And when we repeated those words, in that religious context, it was as if a lightning bolt had hit her, not a lightning that would strike her dead as she had feared, but a special charge that lit her up with the feeling that she could actually be herself and still be a part of a loving community. She said it was one of the most powerful experiences of her life, but especially so that it could happen in a church. When we hit the very bottom of human experience, in which we realize we cannot control ourselves into perfect health, nor can we make ourselves or others perfect, it can be devastating. But in religious community, we remember that we are not alone in this humility, that we can be bound together, held by a common affirmation of all that we find worthy. Religious language, in other words, that honors the depth of our despair as well as the joy of our connection. When I was in Arlington, Virginia, they were going through the eighth principle process, like many of our churches like us, contemplating our complicity with the larger culture of white supremacy. And there was an elderly white gentleman who told me that in the beginning of this process, he was deeply uncomfortable. He'd spent much of his life in corporate America confronting prejudices and trying to right them, and this process was making him feel like he hadn't done enough. But as he allowed himself to really take in the learning, not just about what he needed to learn about himself, but about the culture that surrounds us, he said he started to feel broken open in a good way. As a spiritual experience, he felt called to try to pass on that learning to other elderly men in the congregation, and he told me he considered himself a geezer whisperer. I just love that. He said, I know they won't all agree with me, but I try to help them see it's not just about them, it's about their children and grandchildren and the world that they want them to live in. Coming to this revelation in a religious community took it beyond the political or social realms into one of deeper connection with human experience, a religious experience. So in trying to describe all of this, I find almost all language insufficient, but I still want to struggle to be understood in the deepest way possible. When I use the word prayer, for example, I'm not talking about the idea that I can ask God for what I want. I'm talking about placing myself in a position of listening for a deeper understanding that goes beyond the word meditation. For me, the word God is not about an apparition out there, but an awareness of a deeply felt presence of love within myself. And the words spirit of life don't quite come close enough to explain it. When I begin a service, I don't just want to open it, I want to invoke an awareness that we can set aside our mundane lives and enter into a place of spiritual reflection. When I end a service, it's not just about bringing it to a close, it's also about offering a blessing, a benediction of hope that you may go out into your lives with a sense of renewal. So this is the best I can do to try to explain what traditional religious language means to me. And I'm sure there are many here who are not yet convinced, or at least not moved to try to use the words yourselves, and I don't expect you to. I hope that as we grow to know one another better, we can find a multitude of ways to express what is deepest in our hearts. I realize quite profoundly that I don't have the answers to these dilemmas. But then the poet Denise Levertov reminds me that answers are not necessarily what is required. She says, just when you seem to yourself nothing but a flimsy web of questions, you are given the questions of others to hold in the emptiness of your hands. songbird eggs that can still hatch if you keep them warm, butterflies opening and closing themselves in your cupped palms, trusting you not to injure their scintillant fur, their dust. You are given the questions of others as if they were answers to all you speak. Yes, perhaps this gift is your answer. I am so conscious and grateful for the gift that you offer to me in asking your deep questions. So may we all find this gift among one another and offer it to others in return. Amen. Please rise as you are willing and able, and let us join in our final hymn, which I can't remember what it is.
Bring many names.
Thank you. Bring many names.
And we're going to do 1, 4, 5, and 6 if you're looking at the hymnal. If you're on the screen, it'll all work just fine.
Bring many names, beautiful and good, celebrated parable and story, holiness and glory, living, loving God. Hail and Hosanna, bring many names, old aching God, gray with endless hair, calmly piercing evil's new disguises, glad of new surprises, wiser than despair. Hail and Hosanna, old aching God, young growing God, eager still to know, willing to be changed by what you've started, quick to be delighted, singing as you go. Hail and Hosanna, young growing God, great living God, never fully known, joyful darkness far beyond our seeing, closer yet than breathing, everlasting home. Hail and Hosanna, great living God. Please remain standing as you feel comfortable. As this week marks the end of Yom Kippur, the days of awe in the Jewish tradition, I offer this prayer from the Gates of Prayer, a Jewish prayer book. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. Spirit of life, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay, touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder how filled this place is with awe, and we did not know it. And let us extinguish our chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves and our world through reason and love.
The benediction is actually a parting blessing, the traditional Irish blessing. May the